Hey everybody, Awesome Jumbo here, and hopefully by the time this video has been uploaded, though knowing me that's probably not the case, I'll have finished this video in time for my birthday on the 4th of July. Yep, firecracker baby representing, and I've officially turned 30 years old. Oh my god. Ugh, can I get a refund on my life up to this point? I'm sorry I didn't make more videos. I'll upload that Mortal Kombat 11 ranking this time, I swear. But not only is this my 30th year live on this godforsaken space rock we call Earth, this is also leading up to the 10-year anniversary of the very first video I ever uploaded onto YouTube, the top 15 Platinum Games boss battles. And now I know I mentioned this in one of my other videos before, but it bears repeating. I look back on this video with a good amount of nostalgia, as well as an equal amount of straight up cringe. My video editing skills have definitely improved since then, and I like to think that I've grown wiser and funnier ever since then, but that last one's really up for debate. But for today's topic, I'd like to give my personal flowers to the franchise that got me into this YouTube game in the first place, Bayonetta, a franchise created by Hideki Kamiya, a man that I hold in high regard and with the utmost respect as a game designer anyway. My undying hype and excitement for the release of Bayonetta 2 back on the Wii U is what ultimately inspired me to make my very first video. 10 years have passed since then, and, well, Platinum Games being a company that can only make flawless masterpieces is a statement that aged like milk in the middle of a desert. But, you know, the Bayonetta games are still very enjoyable in my estimation, with some of the most batshit insane and over-the-top bosses I've seen in a game. And we're gonna be ranking them all from worst to best. Hell yeah, we all love our worst to best rankings now, don't we? But I hear you ask, are there gonna be rules for this list? Well, yeah, and alright, you know what, let's just get them over with, eh? Fuck rules, am I right? First of all, remember when I said that I was ranking every boss? Well, yeah, I sorta lied to you. I'm not including anything from 8-bit Bayonetta. Yeah, I bet most of you hardcore Bayonetta fans watching didn't even know this game exists in the first place. I've never played it before, and even if I did include it to make a difference, it wouldn't really make a difference, you know? Secondly, only major main game bosses will be on here. Yeah, dumbass me from 2021 thought he was so smug putting Temperance on the top 10 worst bosses video. Yeah, well fuck him, you dumbass virgin. Thirdly, the rival boss fights, specifically the Jean fights from 1, the Masaluman Sage fights, and the Strider fights from 3 are going to get their respective fights clumped up into one spot because I don't want to be repeating myself constantly during their segments since they don't really change that much in between their respective encounters. Fourthly, this kind of bleeds into rule number 2, but I'll say it anyways, no optional bosses on the list, specifically the ones from Bayonetta 2's Witch Trials and the bosses from Bayonetta 3's optional secret missions. Now, I know there's the Labalus fight from 2, but I'm excluding the optional bosses specifically because they just bloat the list up while being as interesting as a ball of wet toilet paper. And finally, this one also bleeds into Rule 2 and is gonna piss a lot of people off, but this is my video, and when the hell have I ever pissed anyone off on this channel before, am I right? I'm not including the Rodan fights. I haven't bothered fighting him in any of the games for one reason, and one reason alone. Those fucking price tags on the Platinum tickets. Now, I can get the Bayonetta 2 one easily with amiibo spamming over a couple days, but getting max currency just to get the ability to fight this dude in 1 and 3? Fuck that. No thanks. Rodan, I love you, man, but you're straight up scalping me for shiny pieces of cardboard like a Yu-Gi-Oh seller. Anyways, are there any other rules? Nope. Then let's dance, baby. So, starting off with this ranking, even if you don't count the Rodan fights, which I'm not, there are 34 different bosses for this list. We're in this for the long haul. Now, someone's gotta go at the bottom, but who exactly? Well, to break away from the topic for a second, I want to tell the story that fits with the theming. There was this girl I once knew. I swear I'm going somewhere with this, trust me. She was basically the perfect girl. She was adorable, funny. She had a great taste in anime, loved to laugh. We got along so well, and honestly, I thought she was the one. Until one day, I saw her hanging out with another guy and holding hands with him. And let me tell you, the amount of heartache and disappointment I felt that day can't even hold a fucking candle to the disappointment I felt after fighting the final boss of Bayonetta 2. Now, to get this out of the way, this was a very hard list to have to rank overall, but even after months of planning this video out and ordering the bosses, there wasn't a doubt in my mind as to who was going to take the stone trophy of this video. On a surface level, this fight seems perfectly fine without context, because in terms of gameplay and function, the fight is perfectly serviceable. He attacks with a bunch of fast kicks and magic projectiles, and I'll admit that during my second playthrough for footage collecting, where I played this game on hard mode, this guy was kicking my ass more than any other fight in the game. It's all relatively harmless and standard. Well, except for this one instance where these projectiles spawned in out of nowhere and hit me, like, what the fuck, game? So yeah, if you judge this fight in a vacuum, it isn't that bad of a fight. Nothing amazing, but it's perfectly standard. However, that's the major problem with this fight, on top of something I mentioned earlier. context. So, during the pre-release hype, the developers' wishes for the game were that they were trying to make a game where it felt like you were fighting the final boss throughout the entire game from start to finish. Now, to whether it succeeds to this throughout the whole game is up for debate for some, and I'll touch on my thoughts on every other fight as we go along the video, but I'd say that it indeed does live up to that. That is until they just dropped the ball with this kite-wearing nudist prick, who for all intents and purposes is supposed to be the most powerful character in the universe. I mentioned this way back in my Worst Bosses video, but this fight really does feel like the developers ran out of time and budget right at the very end because for being the god of chaos, his attacks don't feel super, well, godlike. I mean, he throws a building at you at one point, and you throw it back at him. Very, very slowly. And if he's a god, then what's stopping him from just yeeting it back at you? Bro, you have a fucking eternity's worth of time to react to that. Just throw it back at me. Seriously, why are you like this, you lanky douchebag? And it's not just the fact that this fight visually gives even the hardest Insomniac's narcolepsy, or the music, which is also the worst in the game by far. Like, seriously, it sounds like this piece was composed using a bunch of tortured geese with trumpets shoved up their asses. But on top of that, the climax is lame as hell, as once he loses his powers due to Loki's Mary Stu bullshit, the climax is almost a one-for-one recreation of the Jubileus climax, but way worse.
Oh, but you dropkick him instead of a falcon punch, so it's just as cool in that respect.
Oh, is it, esteemed viewer? Well, forgive me for thinking that a company that used to brim with endless creativity could do something more interesting than just copying their own homework from 4 years prior. Like, holy shit. I'm sure people in the comments will try their damnedest to defend this asshole from not being at the bottom spot just to spite me, but if I kept bitching about this dipshit anymore, we'd be here all day. Bottom line, this fight is the epitome of major disappointment, and I'm gonna be shedding on him throughout the rest of the video anyway. Easily one of Platinum Games' worst blunders. At least until Babylon's Fall, but we don't talk about that around here. So, with the inclusion of Bayonetta Origins bosses, I had a hard time trying to rank them amongst the main trilogy since this is not exactly the most action-oriented game out there. So, how is this video gonna flow if all the bosses are very different compared to the rest of the trilogy? Very poorly! I'm good at this script writing thing. To quickly cover my thoughts on the game, I ended up avoiding buying this game for a couple of years since I just wasn't that interested in it at the time. Not that I was against playing it at all, but more so because I didn't want to pay full price for it. And after playing it for myself, I'd say, yeah, I enjoyed it, but I was definitely correct in thinking that it wasn't worth the full price tag. And I'll admit that while I did enjoy the game, it really did not leave the best first impression. And that's a pretty good way to describe this game's first boss, unfortunately. So the main structure of the game is venturing through this giant forest, destroying the 4 elemental cores, and gaining a new power for Cheshire that corresponds to that specific element to eventually rescue the young boy at the center, because reasons. And since this is the very first boss, it really doesn't ask for much since you don't have any of your powers yet. Not that it presents itself as much to begin with. It's just one big dude with a shield and 2 smaller dudes that will spawn back in after a couple of seconds. Now, the strategy for beating this guy, I think they intended for you to have to hit him from behind since you don't have the grass power yet to eat his shield away, but the major flaw with this guy is that you can just use Soraya's Thornvine ability to immobilize him, and then have Cheshire just wail on him like no tomorrow. To be fair though, that's not an exclusive flaw to this boss fight, as you'll be seeing later on. Calling this guy a boss fight may seem like a bit of a stretch, and that's because it technically is a stretch, as this guy is a super brain-dead boss fight in a game with super brain-dead combat. That alone gave me the completely wrong impression on how the bosses in this game are gonna go, as this game did give off an impression of having a significantly lower budget than the rest of Platinum Games' repertoire, which, fair enough, I guess, but they could have at least had him have a little more health than what he currently has, and not only is this guy pathetically easy even without your nature powers, seriously, I don't even think this guy lasted a minute when I first fought him, but this is the only boss in the game that gets recycled as a strong enemy later on, and I don't even think it even takes an hour before you start running into them as basic enemies. But the best things I can say about him for not being the worst boss fight on the list are A, he didn't completely blue ball me at the end of a hype as fuck game that I waited years for it to come out, and B, his mediocrity allows the other bosses in the game to shine in far better ways than he ever could have. Now, I just said that the other boss fights in Origins were significantly better, but that should have come with the asterisk of this one particular encounter near the end of the game. So, upon entering the final area of the game, you encounter a character you quarreled with earlier on in the venture, and he decides to make your partnership with your stuffed cat a little more difficult, as he imbues him with magic that causes him to lose control, and you have to get him to come back to his senses. Nothing you haven't seen 1,000 times before, it's one of those bosses. At this point, you acquired the ability to repair broken structures and platforms, and there's a lot of broken shit just lying around, so go off and repair that shit. Though you have to pick your openings carefully since Cheshire is out to murder you in his rage-filled state. So I just realized something here. Why doesn't he ever stop doing his combo when you're 50 miles away from him? Wouldn't you have noticed that? Just find that a tad odd. So yeah, at least it's an original battle compared to the game's first boss fight, but it's really not that good. Not much to say here, let's move on. Okay, so as someone who actually likes Bayonetta 3, I'll admit that the ending segments were a complete dumpster fire. And I mean as far as the story bits are concerned anyway. But after the final battle against Singularity, and that travesty of an ending, the post-credits had a little surprise where you have to play as Viola and fight against a... what? I don't know, what is this? A shadow Bayonetta? I think this is supposed to be her subconscious dark thoughts made manifest as a way of testing Viola to see if she's worthy of not having a stupid nickname like Kitty. But before that, you gotta fight the Kraken demon asshole from the game's prologue. Yeah, remember that guy? The same hentai bitch that just kinda showed up and never showed his face again throughout the rest of the game until now? To get this out of the way now, I'm one of the 8 people that played this game that actually kind of enjoys Viola for her gameplay. Major emphasis on the word gameplay there. It's like a version of Raiden from Metal Gear Rising with much faster and smoother movement controls with parrying for witch times. And I've really grown to love her gameplay in my second playthrough since I played through both Sekiro and Lies of P ever since then. But this first phase of the fight sucks ass. The Kraken attacks with its tentacle swipes and spraying ink hydro pumps around the arena, all the while he's surrounded by a pool of ink that will severely hinder your movement if you fall into it. And that fucking puddle right there is the main problem with this fight, because in conjunction with the puddle, Viola just doesn't have the luxury of being able to attack with mid-range weapons like Bayonetta or dodge with Witch Time. So basically, if you're not keen on using parries, which I wouldn't blame you if you were because these attacks are really wonky, you either have to whittle his health down with short combos, or just let Cheshire out and let him go to town while you spam lawn darts. It's without question the low point of Viola's gameplay throughout the entire game, and this fight is the single most miserable experience on the list. But what keeps this boss fight out of the very bottom spot? Well, because it is an A tier, but the real main reason is because of the second phase. It's okay, you know. The Shadow Bayonetta wields a giant anchor on a chain, and these swings are super telegraphed and slow, which just means free witch time parry opportunities. Just watch out for the desperation attack that she pulls out because that's pretty chaotic. Overall, it's really not that complicated, but it's a boss fight that's heavily dragged down by the first half by a significant margin. Also, does it help that immediately after this part we get that moment. Again, I love Viola for her gameplay, but let's be real, this chick really was a major afterthought in the grand scheme of things. Oh hey, look at that, we're looking at the exact same boss fight I just got done talking about. So if I had to give this hentai monstrosity its flowers here, I'll say that there's way more good going on in this fight than there is in the previous entry. For starters, you fight this dude in the prologue as what I assume was supposed to be this game's attempt at aping off what the second game did, with an epic climactic invasion from the game's major enemies, followed up with a giant demon that's trying to kill you. I do quite like the design of the Kraken itself, and the set piece is ripped straight out of a Titanic movie. It was directed by, well, Hideki Kamiya. They comment on this guy being summoned, but who exactly summoned him? Why is it trying to steal Jean, and are you gonna finish the job later on in the story? Well, to answer now, the answers are, who knows, who cares, and it's never mentioned again. It's almost like the writing team just fell asleep and forgot about him until they included him as a post-game boss. But sadly, the fight is not much better than the one I talked about before. He does his tentacle shenanigans as well as that obnoxious ink puddle that slows you down, forcing you to rely on Gamora in order to deal consistent damage. But at least here you have the benefit of using more long-range weapons during repeat playthroughs, and again, the set piece behind this fight is pretty cool, but man, this is definitely not the best way to start the game off. Also, note that I mentioned him having a post-game boss. You can fight him after beating the game for the first time, and while this fight is almost exactly the same as the first one, you can unlock his weapon and use him as a summon in repeat playthroughs, and I'll admit that I wish I had used him and his weapon more in my second playthrough because I think he might just be the best summon in the game, though more hardcore fans than I will have to clarify that in the comments below. So at least there was a silver lining to all the suffering I had to endure. So here's where we draw the line between the shit bosses and the rest of the bosses that are just kinda okay, for a bit anyway. But the game that would have to take the wooden spoon on this list of okay bosses would have to go to Bayonetta Origins, which in this boss's defense is a massive improvement compared to the previous 5 spots. So after going through an area that really gives off Nier Automata vibes with a giant circus tent accompanied by fireworks, the big bad of this particular area, while nowhere near as interesting as the beauty-obsessed robot in that game, is appropriately clown-like. The fight itself also gives me serious clown around vibes from Wario World. That was a weird fucking game now, wasn't it? It's also noticeably more complex than the first boss, but this being Bayonetta Origins, comparing this boss fight to that one is like comparing eating a bowl of mac and cheese to eating a brick. He spends the fight throwing exploding juggling pins while on a spiky beach ball, so you either have to wait for the small hooks to protrude, or you can trap him in the rose vines and smack him off before you can use your vine powers to knock him off the ball and smack him around the Kingdom Come. Phase 2 changes things up by introducing an insane bullet hell where you have to trap him on one of the 4 pillars before shooting him with the cannon. So yeah, like I said, it's a degree more interesting than the first boss, and thankfully is far more creative and unique for this game, but it's not that much more complicated. Though credit where credit is due, I think he gets by far the coolest climax finisher in the game. Though he's overall still just kinda okay, not much more to say than that. So, Bayonetta 3 is a very, well, divisive game to say the least, for a multitude of reasons. And while I do enjoy the game for a lot of its unique qualities and what it brings to the table compared to the first 2 games, I'm not really that much of a blind fanboy who can't see where most other people are coming from when it comes to the flaws. And one of those will come in the form of the bosses, and more specifically, the final bosses of each of the game's particular worlds, where you go to an alternate universe, meet that universe's Bayonetta, watch them get killed by Singularity's minions, which just makes them seem utterly pathetic, but that's a whole different can of worms I won't get into, and watching the main Bayonetta rip her fucking heart out to make her specific demon go supersized. I'll talk about those as we go along the list, but I think the final one of these is the worst of the bunch. So throughout the game, there have been instances where you have to fight either alternate versions of Bayonetta / Jean, or in the Jean fight's case, a hologram with her fat ass frog with boobs. And before you ask, no, I don't consider that one a proper boss fight, so I won't be counting it, which is fine by me because I can just sum this up as fighting a magician style Bayonetta with a magic baton weapon that fires off bowling pins as projectiles. Phase 2 of the fight where she summons her bat demon that's called, I'm just gonna call it Bat Bitch. And Bat Bitch is an appropriate nickname as this part is kind of annoying to deal with, as Bat Bitch loves to fly just outside of your best weapon's range and attack you with fast attacks that require Shulk's Monado vision in order to see coming on the higher difficulties. But the main thing I love and sorta dislike about this boss fight is the Super Demon segment, where instead of a climactic fight against the kaiju-sized homunculi, your frog with boobs, yes, you heard me correctly, turns into an opera singer with a segment that feels like it's ripped out of the opera scene from The Fifth Element. It's a really cool segment where you have to press specific buttons in order to shield Ball from these mosquito things that attack and tune to the opera piece that's on display. Visually, it's very cool, but in terms of gameplay, it's pretty brain dead. Get used to hearing that word during these particular fights. I must remember my first time throughout this game thinking you had to mash the button to the beat of the song, but the barrier will actually stay there permanently until you press another button on the controller, and the real challenge is trying to do a no-hit run on this part because these little flies do literally nothing to you, at least on hard mode. I don't know if they do more on the highest difficulty, feel free to let me know if that's the case. But yeah, despite that, it's pretty cool and a testament to Platinum Games' creativity, even if I really suck ass at rhythm games. So before the previous fight, you have to fight her partner in crime, which just happens to be this universe's Rosa. Kinda digging the color scheme and outfit here, and she's wielding these weird tombstone gauntlets that are essentially doors to the Umbra Clock Tower. I mean, besides the different moveset, this fight is basically just another PvP with a different set of weapons, even if her marionette form can make hitting her somewhat annoying due to how much she pancakes on the floor. Kinda like an obnoxious top tier rat from a fighting game I played way too damn much. But then after a long ass segment. Oh my god, how long is this shit gonna last? Seriously. Space Harrier section. Okay, Kamiya, we get it. You love Space Harrier. Now please stop throwing these segments into your games already. They're complete shit. You gotta fight the Umbra Clock Tower itself. Like, What? I kinda love the fact that the Umbra Witches outfitted their sacred relic with Rock'em Sock'em robot hands and fucking rocket launchers, because they just love being that little bit extra. Now, this place is slightly higher than the other boss fight I just talked about in this world, because I don't find any part of the fight frustrating or annoying. Well, besides the long space area section before it. Plus, I really like the tower here. Just classic goofy Platinum Games nonsense, and I love it for that. Also, random side note, but I kinda wish that this universe's Enzo had more to do than just 50 seconds worth of dialogue, but, you know, I guess it's consistent with him being the butt of the joke of the franchise. But yeah, pretty cool fight, it's nothing amazing. Man, 3 bosses from Bayonetta 3 back to back. I'd say that for 3, the bosses are quite solid in terms of their spectacle, but they lack somewhat when it comes to the gameplay front in some aspects. Even if they don't quite reach their full-scale potential, thanks to being designed to be played on a portable console that's held together by tape and string. And as far as the not living up to the full potential statement goes, the second Singularity boss in the Wall of China fits that description perfectly. So the design of this guy is a blatant homage to Sun Wukong, if that is if he loved Krispy Kreme and was dipped in mint-flavored toothpaste. And let me tell you, I wasn't making the connection until the second playthrough after I had played a bit of Black Myth Wukong from last year. The gorilla-like behavior, the staff that can extend to ridiculous lengths, and the fact that he pulls pieces of his hair to create duplicates in his second phase. Yeah, it's definitely one of the more blatant references in the enemy designs in the series. The fight altogether is just okay. He's a big boy and he has this really annoying fetish for clinging onto the walls and throwing shit at you. And assuming you're not playing on repeat playthroughs with all the other weapons, you're gonna have to rely on either trying to pronounce that name, or projectiles, because he's playing a literal version of the floor is lava. It gets a bit better when you knock him down, though mind his little temper tantrums because his strikes are very quick. But then after this boring as fuck turret section, oh boy howdy do I love these. That universe's Bayonetta dies after being the dumbest bitch ever by just standing there while you do jack shit about it. Oh my gosh, you have no idea how badly I want to complain about how stupid the story is. Anyway, back on track. The first world super boss was a kaiju boss fight. Now, is this gonna be just like that, or oh wow. You know, someone at Platinum Games really does have posters of Madama Butterfly on their laptop, don't they? Now, I poke fun at this, but I appreciate the sudden left turn because it tells you that every fight like this was gonna be its own beast. The spectacle is stupid, but in an entertaining way. Gameplay, on the other hand, I find this to be the weakest of the super bosses. You just blow bubbles at him. Blowing bubbles. Let it be known that these games are incredibly stupid, and that's why I love them. Obviously, he's a spry little shit, and he'll occasionally smack you with a stick, though it's free to just smack away with the freest parry timing imaginable, so the real challenge comes from trying to get a pure platinum with this fight. So yeah, the style is absolutely on display, kinda like someone's weirdest kinks, but I've learned to appreciate substance-filled experiences with my over-the-top stupid style visuals. And these fights are the definition of style over the substance in this game's case. He's at least higher than the opera scene because at least it feels more like a unique boss all throughout the encounter as opposed to just another NPC at first, you know? Still, it's just alright. To start, this next boss fight shows up in this chapter called Fear and Frustration, and frustration was the correct word to describe the beginning of this clip section, where I spent well over 30 minutes trying to figure out where to go. I got some side shit out of the way to be fair, but man, I deadass felt like an idiot when the game was clearly saying on the map in Overworld, hey dipshit, to pass over there. True story, so let it be known that I don't just act stupid, I am indeed really stupid. But to start the boss fight off proper, the fight has a really sick build-up. You scale the tallest tree in the forest, and up at the top are these red gashes left behind some creature. And when you reach the top and finally see it, it's a giant fairy dragon with an admittedly pretty sick design. And it just fucks your shit up the first time you see him. Since you get your ass handed to you, you get up, shake it off, let's move on ahead. And the build-up is just intense, surprisingly so given the game's more cozy and cutesy vibes. It's just immediately scary, what with that sick design and the fact that Chester's attacks bounce off of his hide like rubber. That is until you reach him and get an upgrade to your vine attack, the Vine Snare, which basically works after enemies do a specific attack. I can basically describe his attack patterns by virtue of me realizing something about his animations. Those attacks look very similar to Rathalos from Monster Hunter, don't they? And if you're a fan of that series, then you know the drill. Just add on some insane windups that would make Brawl Ganondorf point and laugh, though he tanks like a brick house with his scale armor, and he likes to change up the battlefield in the second phase, where some of his attacks will cause some of these, what the hell are these, cooking pots? I have no fucking clue, to sink for a few seconds. Or how you have to stand behind these stalactites in order to avoid his screen nuke of a flamethrower that will probably kill you in one hit. Though anyone who's bothered testing this can let me know in the comments, since he charges it for what feels like shy of forever. And that right there is the thing that that kept this guy from being one of the best in the game and much higher. It goes on for way too long. He takes so many hits just to kill him, though to be fair, that could be because I never got all the upgrades for Cheshire's damage per hit up to that point in the game. And there's also this tense moment where you have to get the steel cage to fall on top of him to save Cheshire from impending doom. It's so exhausting, but memorable. So he's definitely in the upper half of the lower half of this game's bosses, I'd say. Okay, get ready for a couple more Origins bosses because the majority of the fights in this game are the definition of the word decent. So after the main characters split up because bullshit trope, you save Cheshire from the king of fairies who had been watching you like the creepy little stalker he really is, and it turns out that creepy little stalker is correct as he's actually just a tiny dude. I'll admit that while this twist is kinda funny, I'm just kinda sick of this trope with the big guy turning out to be just a tiny midget gag. Though to this fight's credit, it did subvert my expectations by not fighting you himself, but by summoning not a fairy, but instead he summons a basic-ass enemy from the original game. Now, that was something I did not expect this game to do. Actually make me giddy from seeing the common angel fodder? That's something that I will definitely praise this game for, and that's its use of nostalgia as a means of storytelling as an origin story. And it makes sense that Cereza would have trouble killing these things as a child, because she's not the angel-slaying badass that kills these things like it's the easiest thing in the world. They attack in exactly the same way they do in the first game, slow swings and combos, but you quickly take note of the Iron Maiden sitting there in the back. Yep, just like the ones you used to kill them with in the first game. And I say that they attack like the OG enemies because he summons multiple of these guys, and you gotta do it again before the Iron Maiden somehow flies into him, and then you can smack him around like a little bitch. Plus, the finisher is just so deliciously ironic. So you gotta chalk it up to being a surprisingly good boss coming from a game that I thought wouldn't surprise me at all. Get ready to hear that a couple more times later on the list. So I'd say this is where the bosses on this list start to hit the good to great range. And forgive me if it seems like I'm putting the bosses from Origins in the same order that they appeared in the game, and that's because they really do scale up in quality as the game goes along. Though, with that last statement, I have to walk back and place the game's optional boss fight right here. Gotta spice the list up somehow, you know? So once you beat the main game, you get access to the side story for Jean, which might as well be this game's equivalent to Virgil's downfall. And that might just be the best way to describe my feelings on this side story, where you play as Jean and Gang Charles. I guarantee you that not a single one of you watching this video are gonna get that joke. In-jokes are so fun. The novelty is nice, I suppose, and you even get some cool costumes for repeat playthroughs, but the campaign and gameplay differences are so minuscule that I question why they bothered with a side story to begin with. I mean, I know why they did it, but I'll touch on that real soon, believe me. Cereza gets trapped by some force, and then Jean has to go save her. I mean, what else is new, right? And all the while, this mysterious voice goes you to turn back. Flash forward to not even 30 minutes later into the campaign, the real voice is revealed to be this guy, who calls himself the Affirmer of Phenomena. AKA, it's basically just Singularity from the future. Like, why the fuck are you giving yourself this obnoxiously pretentious title for no reason? Just call yourself Singularity, you pretentious fuck. You could give some Yu-Gi-Oh monsters a run for their money with how dumb that name is. So, the main point of this side story in the end isn't to give us a playable Jean or explain any plot holes in the main game because, well, this side story doesn't tell you shit about the lore of the fairies like the main game was supposed to. But the main reason, the only reason I'd argue that Singularity is here in the first place, is to try and justify them killing off Jean in Bayonetta 3's climax. Okay, so Bayonetta 3 is a very divisive game that I derive some enjoyment from, but one of the many ways they completely fucked up the story is the way they treated Jean. Not only did she have next to zero influence in the story since she was relegated to these god-awful stealth minigames, which I completely skipped on my second go for footage collecting because they were so boring, but her final contribution was to get unceremoniously killed off in the lamest way possible. And in this little side story, I'd argue not only exists as a middle finger to all the Jean fans out there with this little twist, but it just makes it worse by making Jean to be the dumbest fucking idiot imaginable because reasons. Like, you knew you were gonna get stabbed in the back by a wheelchair-bound Howie Mandel, and you do absolutely fucking nothing to stop your own death when that happens because,
ow, I just wanted to help Cereza in any way I possibly can.
Why are you considered Bayonetta's equal if you're this unapologetically stupid, you fucking fashionless, tone-deaf bent, which means they either wrote themselves into a corner and just decided to roll with it, or the story writers of this series are just that high off the scent of their own farts to think that this side story will soften the blow on that dumb as hell plot twist. Like, holy fuck, I don't even think the people that wrote Cars 2 would look at this and say this is intelligent. And that's saying a lot because Cars 2 is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Okay, going past the story relevance with this fight, which if I didn't, this video would triple in length, I swear to God. The fight itself, surprisingly good. He's got a lot of similar attacks from his OG fight in Bayonetta 3, with decently quick swings and combos, homing spears, projectile bombing, and even summoning his doppelganger to wombo combo you or oh, Charles! And he even likes to use his fancy scrolls to summon some of the bosses he fought in the main game. Which makes me question that if he could summon fairies, then why didn't he just do that in Bayonetta 3? Could have made the enemy variety a little less confusing with fairy enemies instead of those mint-flavored mannequins. Overall, stupid story implications aside, this is a great fight that managed to stick out in a good way in terms of the gameplay. Though if Process of Elimination hadn't already spelled it out for you, I think that his other boss fight is better. So now onto my pick for the second weakest boss in Bayonetta 2. Though comparing the second worst boss in Bayonetta 2 to Aesir is like comparing a chocolate cake from a fancy 5-star French restaurant to a brick. I know this is the second time I used that analogy in this video, but it's the one that makes the most sense in my head. But after much thought, I decided to go with the scary skull-faced kite. I'll admit that I kinda wanted to put this thing higher on my list since there were a lot of things I loved about it. First of all, the design is just awesome. A giant manta ray with a skull for a face, and its 2 eyeballs that can extend and have these freaky as hell mouths. And speaking of hell, it also doubles as a flying circle of hell in the lore, carrying lost souls inside of its stomach. Second, the music is just amazing. It sounds so sinister, and the final part of the song sounds like an impending apocalyptic event is about to happen. And third, the fight is pretty fun. Though, upon thinking about it, I do kind of wish that they did a bit more with the boss fight, since you're mostly attacking the eyes on the wings of the creature, while he fires missiles from his skull face on occasion. You don't really see a whole lot of him is my fucking point, and the finisher is one of the weaker ones in the game, I gotta admit, though you're never gonna get me to hate ripping the fucker's eye out. It's still a really cool fight. Funny enough, I thought about ranking Aesir's younger forms lower than this, and yes, I'm just going to talk about these boss fights back to back since they're basically the same. In fact, these fights are almost one-to-one the same as the first phase's Aesir, with significantly more stuff going on in the background that gives them more of a climactic feel than the actual final boss, which just makes me hate the final battle even more. Hell, the fight against Lopter is arguably a much better candidate to be the actual final boss, which is funny because, again, it's the same fucking character. And if you held a gun to my head and told me to pick between these two, my vote goes to Lobster exclusively for the stage being a callback to the first game's prologue opening. And, you know, using Madama Butterfly to headbutt a meteor also helps that. Honestly, it feels like this is where the game's budget ran out because the game's final boss feeling just sort of stops after this fight. So, probably the best advice I could give to people who haven't played this game yet, first of all, why are you even watching up to this point? Is it because of my deep, sexy voice? Second, if you play Bayonetta 2, then just stop playing after this boss fight. Okay, actually play the final mission in the Star Fox costume to get a better Star Fox Zero experience than the actual Star Fox Zero, then stop playing there. Closure? What's that word supposed to mean anyway? Man, I'm surprised it took me this long to get to the very first boss from the first game, which probably goes to show just how well this game's bosses have held up. But for the worst one, in my opinion, it's gonna take some explaining, cause otherwise, this would be this ranking's Fiku Spider placement. If you know, you know. And I decided to pick the Jean fights. Now, again, please listen to what I have to say before you dislike mob me. The Jean fights are solid 1v1 battles where you're fighting a character that fights exactly the same as you do, minus the witch time, which I just now realized she doesn't do in any of her fights while I was writing this part of the script. That's weird, not that I'm complaining. And during certain moments in the story, you have to fight her 4 times. Now, the reason I ranked her as the worst of the rival fights is simply because her multiple battles are inconsistent. The first fight is in a flashback where it serves as a solid tutorial for the game's anti-gravity mechanic where you can walk on walls and the ceilings in certain areas. It's a solid fight if a little short. The second phase is also the same except inside of an active tornado. Solid shit, but again, pretty short. And you can see why I clumped the rival battles together now, right? And then there's the third fight. This fight sucks dick. It's pretty much the same as the other fights with her before, except now she can use instant wicked weaves with split-second timing where it feels like you have literally a blink's worth of time time to react to it. Or not even that, because I guess she could just do that while she's in hit stun, like right here. What the fuck? Why can't she just do that shit all of a sudden? And the part where she rides a motorcycle with some hilariously wonky hitboxes that just activate whenever they damn well feel like. I never feel safe attacking her in this fight because of that. Fuck this fight. By far one of my least favorite parts of the original game. But then there's the fourth and final fight, and if you wanted to know where this fight would go if I split the rival fights up, it would probably be either number 5 or 6. It's one of the best fights in the game. No gimmicks, no counterattacking bullshit, just you two, your weapons, and a shitload of missiles she's using to nuke the island. The fight constantly changes tempo, you hop from rooftops, riding on the missiles themselves, the sides of buildings, and finally on the roof where you started on. And it's super tough, but fun as hell while having the signature Platinum Games ridiculousness that they're best known for. Like, how can you look at two pole dancers throwing a missile back and forth like a tennis ball and say that's not awesome? Also, quick aside, but is it just me, or does this game become way too strict with the button mashing quick time events in the latter half? Like, I mashed the absolute fuck out of that Y button to win the clash, and I still ate shit. Like, what the fuck? Honestly, I'm glad that games have stopped doing button mashing quick time events like this, because getting old fucking sucks. Anyways, sorry for the unrelated mid-boss discussion rant. Yeah, I'll admit that I'm doing this fight dirty by virtue of my own rulings, because it's mostly the third fight that ranks her this low on the list. Because the fourth fight is genuinely amazing. If only I didn't have to do that obnoxious Space Harrier minigame before this moment, then I'd be down to fight her more often. So, might as well address some more of the remaining Bayonetta 3 bosses while we're midway into the good section of the ranking. One of the defining things this game tried to do is the introduction of the ritual, where at the end of each world, Bayonetta would just rip her fucking heart out in order to supersize her summon to just go unga bunga on some big bitches. The girl must have an endless supply of blood if she's able to survive that ordeal the first time. And that first time is a pretty solid way to introduce the concept of how powerful the homunculi can be, as the first thing you see upon entering the alternate universe of Tokyo, where this giant whale monster is just tearing shit up left to right throughout your stay there. And at the very end of the world's run, you actually get a taste of the fiery yo-yo weapons early as this universe's Bayonetta, which I gotta say real quick, she has one of my favorite outfits the girl's ever worn throughout the series. The first phase is against this super generic blob thing inside of the whale that attacks with paralyzing shockwaves and loves pushing you away with wind. Though I do like where the big bitch tries to eat pieces of debris to stop you inside of it, where you can use the debris as platforms to avoid the fog. Overall, it's a very solid, if generic, fight, being the first real boss of the game after the Strider boss fight earlier in the game. And I say this to preface that phase 1 isn't the reason he's this high. That honor goes to the second phase. Now, what do you think the gimmick is gonna be here for the first time? Is she gonna try and solo this behemoth in her tiny human-sized body, or...
Run! It's Godzilla!
Okay, yeah, I like this way more. Now, this right here, I thought was just the coolest shit when I first played the game back when it first came out, because holy shit! It's just a full-blown kaiju boss battle. And I've been growing fond of kaiju stuff like Godzilla ever since I moved into an apartment with my roommate, who just happens to be a huge Godzilla fan. And from a spectacle perspective, this fight is just awesome. It's literally a giant 1v1 kaiju showdown with a simple rock, paper, scissors core to the combat. Strike beats bite, bite beats guards, and guard beats strikes. And people seem to really not like this fight for some reason, and I'm not even gonna bother pretending I agree with, for the most part anyway. The spectacle and creativity are absolutely on display. I do agree that it could have been a little bit faster. Like, I swear, it feels like you have a full 10 seconds to react to his actions, and guarding is kind of busted. But it's a kaiju fight, they're really slow, what do you expect? But besides that, I had the dumbest smile on my face the entire time like a stupid unga bunga bitch. And the finisher just has Gamora fire a fucking laser out of his giant chest mouth. I've heard that this fight is just a Shin Godzilla reference. Does that happen in that movie? I still need to watch it. Anyways, if only the first phase was a bit more memorable, then this could have been the best of the final bosses in Bayonetta 3. So I guess I'll be this fight's #1 stand regardless. So, at the end of the Egypt world, you're met with a really cool set piece, where you fly through these underground caverns, crashing through crystal walls, and fighting off these homunculi on the back of your trusted parrot friend, all while being chased by these, I can only describe as horny wolf chimera demons throughout. It's a cool segment that I wish ran smoother on the Switch, believe me, I'm gonna address that in a minute. But at the end of it all, you can see that there were 2 of these things going after you, and out of all the world bosses, this one is by far the best in my opinion. It takes place on the this platform that acts as one half of a pendulum scale, while this universe's Jean fights alongside you, fighting the enemies and the other boss on the other one. And you gotta make sure there's enough balance to keep either the platforms from sinking into the clouds that will deal damage to you. Both of these bosses will actively alternate and will attack with certain moves exclusive to that specific enemy. The black one attacks with lightning attacks that can linger, while the white one spews out tornadoes and other wind attacks. You just gotta watch out for their leg sweeps, which can kinda come out of nowhere since their legs make a Blue Tongue's Kink's legs look like tree trunks by comparison. Phase 2 is also where it ups the epic factor by turning into this Hydra Cleopatra looking motherfucker. Now I'll just say that since the homunculi enemies in this game have such bland designs that end up becoming homogeneous, this stands out in a good way since it looks like something the devs would have cooked up in something like Bayonetta 2. And this second fight is the best of the super summon fights in the game as well, where you alternate between your nuclear spider bro with the name that's impossible to pronounce on the ground and your parrot buddy up in the skies, and you alternate depending on which part of the body is currently exposed. It's incredibly simple, just like the others, but it manages to strike the perfect balance of epic nonsense while being somewhat fun. It's just too bad that's the only thing that's balanced about this fight, because holy shit, this frame rate is so choppy. It's both so unfortunate and frustrating that this game is locked behind the Switch, because it's pretty clear at times that this kind of game with a scope as big as this cannot work on this potato-powered brick of a console. One that, let me emphasize, cannot run Dust and Elysian Tale without frame rate drops. A game that released back in 2012. Hopefully the Switch can at least run this game to competent levels. Maybe I'll show some footage of this fight side by side if it does run better there, because that's the main thing that holds this fight back from being the best in the game. But a man can dream, I guess. Now, I'll sum up this boss with the exact phrase I said to myself after I finished Bayonetta 3 for the first time. Wow, they did it. They made a final boss that doesn't suck. After 8 years, Platinum Games finally gave us a good final boss. Thank you. I don't think you realize how big of a deal this was to me back in the day. I've been a massive fan of these guys for basically their entire existence, and for as much as I love Bayonetta 2, I will never forgive that game's final boss for starting a curse that affected their game's final bosses for years after its release. Now, I could just be speculating, but I'm mostly pinning the blame on Ace here because fuck him. Close to a decade with mostly great games that have just garbage final bosses. But one thing Bayonetta 3 did that, while it's not the best final boss ever, it's a good one. Not as good as I initially thought of on my first playthrough, but still, it's a masterpiece compared to all the final boss slop that came before it. The fight starts off with another Sin Gamora Kaiju fight, and I don't have anything to say about it that I didn't say in the previous segment where I brought it up. It's just good old Kaiju action that I like. But the actual fight against Singularity takes place after you blasted him up to the moon. This franchise gets really stupid, okay? And this dude really loves spamming those damn cloud puddles to force you into the air in order to not have your health slapped constantly. That's okay because it also uses hands like vacuums to bring you to him, so ranged combat isn't much of an option there. And don't think that it's going to be just the two of you, by the way, because he'll summon some enemies to help out, including those obnoxious chunky chunk fucks to pee in your cornflakes for the upteenth time that day. Now, I say all that, but it's still a fun fight, and it's really cool seeing all the other Bayonettas from the multiverse come together in game style after the second phase, even though I am incredibly tired of the multiverse. The third phase plays out pretty much note for note like the opening prologue of the game. The trippy Doctor Strange background visuals, clone attacks, spear homing fields, again, it's all very solid stuff. Now, you may have noticed that I haven't been sounding as hyped here as I feel like I should have, and that's because I said the fight was good. And that's just it. It's just good. Although for what was supposed to be the epic conclusion to an already epic trilogy, it's sort of a mild letdown. But again, this fight is a masterpiece compared to some of the other final battle garbage from games like Star Fox Zero or Nier Automata, like I said earlier, but this fight just lacks that wow factor that I've been craving since Bayonetta 2 all those years ago, which kind of describes my opinion on this game in general. But I will give it up that the Bayonetta 1 and 2 cameos were pretty sick, with the UI changing throughout the phases and the music in the background changing to match the Bayonetta. It's so fucking cool. But now I gotta confess my biggest problem with the fight that's gonna make me sound like a fucking hypocrite, but I'm gonna address that later. This fight is too damn long. I remember this exact same thing during my first playthrough, and it really sank in during my second playthrough. The Kaiju battle, the fight on the moon, the final phase in the destroyed city, the multiple phases within the final phase, the cutscenes littered in between all of those phases. This fight took me nearly an hour to finish both times. It's exhausting. Not helped by the fact that the game ends with that ending. No, we're not gonna touch upon that. Just sweep it under the rug like you with your copy of Shrek the Third. It's not canon, it doesn't exist. But as is, I'll give this final boss the bronze medal in the totem pole for best final bosses in the series. Again, it's miles better than Ace here. So now for the big bosses of the first Bayonetta, and my personal pick for the worst boss, there isn't the third Jean fight, goes to Babyface Bitch. I don't know how to pronounce that, and I'm not even going to attempt to guess how to pronounce it in the first place. Now, calling this guy the weakest of the big bosses in one, it's like being called the worst How to Train Your Dragon movie. Mid compared to the others, but still pretty damn good all things considered. Hopefully this statement didn't age poorly. First of all, I low-key hate the design since it's a weird baby face at the end of these tentacles coming out of human adult face and mouths. Like, what? Yeah, I know they're cherub faces, it's an angel, but it's still hella weird. Doesn't help that the faces also have the creepiest voice filter ever. Fuck this design, man. The fight itself is great, but I do have a couple gripes with it. Occasionally throughout the fight, he'll smack his feelers into the platform to smash them, and you'll fall into a quick time event that is an instant game over if you fuck up, and now I'm questioning why he's even holding the platforms up if he's trying to kill you. Just drop them down when I least expect it, you annoying prick. And also, these purple blobs hinder your movement if you get stuck inside of them, and let me tell you, that gets pretty annoying after a few times. And when you use your fist to smash the baby face in, please don't clip that out of context, you crawl up the tentacle to drop kick the adult face in. Man, I am not making myself sound normal today. Though honestly, I kinda wonder why they stopped doing these bosses where you run all over them, Shadow of the Colossus style. Figured they would have done that more, but whatever. Slice all 3 tentacles off. I guess she's just that much of a badass that she can cut through flesh and bone with just her bare hands, and you pop this bitch like a pimple with Scolopendra, which was always one of my favorite summons in this game. And it just makes me wish that you could have used him in 2, and especially 3. Man, that would have been really fun. So yeah, cool fight. Moving on. So out of the cardinal virtues, the first one has by far the best build-up of the lot. He taunts you, actively tries to kill you, which he will because fuck this game's quicktime event bullshit, and when you finally get through the worst chapter in the first half of the game, he's waiting there at the Colosseum, and it's a great precedent for what the rest of the game is going to offer. It's pretty basic at first, fighting him on this narrow platform, which you could just decide to destroy, and then you're fighting him on the ground, but he'll also turn the fight into a game of the floor is lava. Literally. And you can use the hourglass in the arena to destroy the platform. Now, I get the point, but this thing right here is by far my biggest problem with the fight. Now, it's cool rewinding time to fix the platform the first time, but it plays this obnoxiously long animation that you can't skip, by the way, and he can destroy the platform multiple times. You do the math. That animation just murders the pace of the fight, and it gets obnoxious super fucking quickly. But besides that, it's a really fun, chaotic fight that never stops being entertaining, and few things in this franchise are about as satisfying as suplexing a dragon. Again, this franchise gets really stupid. The second half isn't nearly as varied, but it's still really fun and cool, and I love how the game shows that Bayonetta is rocking more than one summon demon with the Parrot Bro here. Overall, it's still an awesome first boss for an already awesome game. Kind of a random boss to be slapping onto the top 15, but I just like to think that I'm built different. This asshole right here just undoes all your hard work of climbing up this long-ass bridge by using his face that doubles as a buzzsaw. Incredibly random, but dick move, bro. But at least the fight is awesome. First of all, I gotta compliment the music for this fight. It just has this grand epic feeling like you're fighting against the most powerful warrior of the Pearly Gates with this intense chorus. This might just be my favorite boss theme in the game. It's so fucking good. Seriously, why wasn't this song a Smash Ultimate? And the fight is pretty damn cool too. You fight while falling down the tower you just got done climbing up, and he'll attack by riding his face like a surfboard. Again, have I mentioned these games are really stupid? The second half takes place underwater, where his slashes are so strong that it slices the very water in two. Definitely delivering on that ridiculous final boss feel. Looking at you, Ace here. It's a shame that the fight is so short, like another fight I'll be touching on later on this list. Though, I definitely prefer to have my bosses be short than having them be overly long. Looking at you, Singularity. Short, but sweet. Definitely the most underrated fight in the game, IMO. If you ever have any Christian friends or family members that say that Bayonetta is satanic or viscerally attacking religion because you kill angels, just show them this clip right here. First of all, it's fiction, and second of all, they're not saying anything about it because these angels are complete assholes. They don't give two shits about human lives if this alone is of any indication, because again, it's fiction. Seriously, how many people do you think died in this scene right here? I mean, sorry about the random rant there for a second. But yeah, the second boss of the second game is against this freaky angelic snake creature, who you may remember being an absolute dick to you at the beginning of the game by slicing your blue angel jet with a simple swipe of the claw, and it's only in the first chapter of the game where you can give it the business. It's a cool fight, but I don't really consider it a real boss, just a mini boss, so I'm only just mentioning it here for clarity's sake. The actual fight is in chapter 3, where you start off with this really cool segment where you surf up a water twister, which leads you to the pearly gates of Paradiso. But you're telling me there were 3 of these fucking things roaming around? But 3 of these guys means 3 times the fun. Now, this is a flying battle, and I've heard a lot of people criticize the flying battles for overly simplifying the battles to where you don't have to worry about positioning, since you don't have to move much at all. I mean, I get it, but I'd be lying if I said that I agreed with them about it. It's more so about the spectacle than having to rely on positioning, and it's not like most fights in the series really worry about that to begin with. But anyways, the first 2 of these exist to give you a taste of the actual fight against the main one, with simple swipes and bites alongside spitting out icicles like a shotgun. The main one is where a majority of the fight takes place, and it's an absolute spectacle of a fight combined with a really sick finisher. Oh man, that poor horse must be suffering mad whiplash after that attack. Though, fun fact about the music here, Death Battle actually used this in the second fight against Goku vs. Superman. But yeah, it's yet another sick battle for the books. So the premise of Origins is about Cereza walking into a forbidden forest to help with this random kid who appears in her dreams to help him out. Very smart of her to dive on in head first to help some random ass guy she never even met. The kid's name being Lucon, who was sealed away for reasons that become incredibly obvious as the game goes on. And fun fact, the entire time I was playing this game, I thought the twist would be that Lucon was the fairy predecessor to Luca. Lucon, it just made sense of how dumb that reach was, but thankfully that wasn't the case. My eyes would have careened in outer space with how hard my eyes would have rolled from how dumb that twist in my head was. And I guess the twist that Luca was Strider in 3 kind of conditioned me to think that. The other twist was that he was secretly Morgana's child, like how Cereza was banished for being a half-breed. It would explain why she was banished as well. And yeah, I was completely correct on that twist, by the way. But sadly, the thing that's needed to save him is the blood of a demon. In other words, Cheshire has to die for him to come back. But we can't have that, now can we? He's gotta appear in the next Smash game. So now he's being a little pissant and transforms the white wolf you've been stalking throughout the game into this insane wolf monster with arguably the coolest design in the game. And the fight itself is really good, though you don't even start it by fighting him. Instead, he'll siphon the 4 elements from Cheshire, while you have to navigate an obstacle course that changes throughout the fight, and ends when you destroy these 2 chandelier thingies to break down the barrier and start the fight proper. Since he's a big old doggo with wings, he does basically what you'd think he'd do. Claw swipes, aerial rush attacks, and he'll even incorporate elemental attacks depending on the phase to keep you on your toes. And as the fight goes on, you slowly gain your elemental powers and abilities back to help out. It's easy just like most fights in the game, and it's got really good production values for a game like this, which I appreciate. Though I do wish that they had incorporated more uses with the 4 elements throughout the fight. Like, he doesn't even use a lot of the nature powers himself, and when you get your powers back, they're basically there for cosmetic upgrades when you get them back throughout the fight. That, and like the fight with Singularity, I think the fight goes on for a little too long. It doesn't last an hour or anything like that, but the water phase, for instance, can cause the fight to really drag. But then during the final phase, you get access to Unbound Cheshire, where you just get to go straight up unga bunga bitch on this guy with no restrictions. It is kind of awkward adapting to this new single character control scheme, almost like it's made by an action game company or something. But who cares? This is pure catharsis and I'm all in on this nonsense. And then the fight ends with a beam war. Boy, I sure feel the tension watching 2 characters struggle by doing fucking nothing. No joke, the only beam war that's hype is the one in Wonderful 101 against Draginga. Fucking damn it, I thought we abandoned this trope back in Deathly Hallows Part 2 where it belonged. Jokes aside, this would have been the best boss fight in the game if A, it didn't drag its feet like a bitch, and B, if it was the actual final boss. So he gets honorary shy of the top 10 spot for that. Now, obviously you can tell with this placement that Bayonetta 3 has the overall weakest bosses of the trilogy, which is partially a testament to how good the fights in the first 2 games are, but also highlights how much potential this game could have had, but ultimately doesn't quite achieve. But the fights against Strider are an example of a rival fight done well. Unlike the Jean fights in the first game, Strider managed to snag a higher spot than her, mainly by having the fights be more consistent in quality. Looking at you, Jean Fight 3. And also, while the furry lore was just kind of there and was something that Origins tried to explain, I still appreciate it for Strider because his design is just awesome. What can I say? Werewolves are cool. Even pixie furry OCs like this one. And I want to say the first fight against this furry weirdo is honestly perfect. With the environment, fighting him on the walls with the blood red moon, which I just realized that this is the only time you fight any enemies on walls in the moonlight in the entire game as I was typing this out. And the confident sexual teasing that Bayonetta exudes here is pretty much the craziest it gets in this game. It's fun and very well choreographed. The first and final fights are where you play as Bayonetta, while the second and third fights are where you play as Viola. Surprisingly, these are the only mandatory boss fights she gets in the entire game. These fights are the perfect fights for her, even if she was just kind of there for 99% of the game's story. Since his attack patterns are consistent across all 4 fights, parry opportunities are easy to come across and are extra satisfying to pull off. Granted, he does get a new attack here and there, like erecting these stained glass walls to obscure your vision, and being able to teleport on a whim, but it's a very consistent fight with a solid flow to the battle. His Hell Shockwave that stuns you for a free hit requires you to mash the fuck out of the analog controller to break free, which is pretty annoying. But besides that, I've got no complaints with this dude at all. Besides the dumb as hell twist that he's secretly Luca because the Lucas of the multiverse converging or something, like, why? Honestly, I was gonna rank this dude just outside the top 10, but I grew to like his fights more and more during the writing process as I thought about it. It's just a good and consistent series of battles, and that's all it really needs to be. Also, next time I fight this dude, I'm playing Powerwolf in the background. So I guess I've got a pretty big fucking decade-old elephant in the room that I gotta address here now, don't I? I ranked this bitch as the 4th best boss in the series way back in my very first video, but now she's not even cracking the top 5? What gives? Well, like my opinion on Placidusax and my Elden Ring ranking, it's not that the fight got worse for me, but it's because my opinions on the other fights have elevated over the years. The first phase is a 1v1 against this pompous bitch who really didn't have any personal beef with you and was only power hungry, but she snacked on Jean's soul, and that's like sticking your dick into a hornet's nest. Or shoving a hornet's nest up your cooch in this instance. Which, by the way, ouch. She doesn't really do a whole lot that you haven't seen in other 1v1 fights like this. She's got combos, range with her whips, and she loves to plant these obnoxious plant things that spit projectiles to be extra annoying. It's simple, but man, this fight is actually pretty hard. And phase 2 is where it gets a bit more intense, where even the music just amps up and screams, "You done fucked up? Now get ready to die!" It's another piece that really should have been in Smash Bros. Maybe think about that for Smash 6 Sakurai, don't deny it, we all know it's gonna happen. Though if it means getting rid of Hero and Min Min, I'm happy to have this music not be in the game. She may have gained a few £100, but just like the real-life hippo that she'd be labeled as in real life, don't be fooled. She is fast and aggressive as fuck in this phase. So you can see where she gets the nickname Whisperer of her Insanity from. This fight actively drove me insane this go around because she's so damn fast. And just be careful of that suction attack she likes to do because she can drain your health like a bitch with that move. So yeah, still an amazing boss fight. Less so for the spectacle, but more so for everything else it has going on. The atmosphere, the stakes, and that gameplay are still sublime. Plus, you can fight this bitch in Bayonetta 3 as an optional boss and even use her as a summon. But that's optional, so I'm not really counting it. Just a nice little Easter egg is all. So yeah, she leaves quite the impression in Legacy, despite being a pretty bland character overall. And the award for the most blue ball big boss for my original best boss rankings goes to this big old bitch. The second of the cardinal virtues may be the most bland in terms of design, though that could be a strength depending on who you ask, since the others are just these weird as fuck bionicle monstrosities that only a 6-year-old will find logical and appealing. I would know because I was one of those kids. But during my first ever list, I just kinda glossed over this boss for the list simply because, well, I honestly couldn't tell you. Younger me versus the me of today have some drastically different tastes in a lot of things, and if I could go back and smack myself upside the head for anything, well, besides picking up a sugar addiction, it's excluding this boss from my original list, because this fight is honestly top tier. It takes place inside of a hurricane with floating pieces of debris and cable cars flying every direction. You can even throw those fancy cable cars at his face for shits and giggles. So right there, this guy is a massive improvement over Fortitudo in the atmosphere department. But in general, the gameplay is just much better in this one. No gimmicks, better music, which, seriously, why was the Bayonetta music selection so sparse in Smash Ultimate? You can't suplex a dragon here, which is pretty hard to top, so how about running up his arm's shadow with the Colossus style and using your summon to rip his arms off like wet tissue paper, culminating with breaking his body down and using your summon to smash his face in. Quite literally. And on top of that, this is where Bayonetta's top tier personality comes into play the best in the entire game.
I feel like a fucking celebrity in this town.
this cutscene aged gracefully. Now, I don't want to go into detail of what happens after the boss fight, but I really want to go into detail of what happens after the fight. She places a cherub statue on top of a gas truck, jumps to the end of a gas trail, ignites it with her heel gun, and when that doesn't work, she shoots a bullet into the cherub statue's dick hole all without looking at it. Seriously, this was the moment that made me fall in love with both this game and this character. So fuck you past me for excluding this 10 out of 10 boss fight from my original list. Oh yeah, this is the part where the competition is at its stiffest, forgot to mention that. Man, if there was ever a way to sell someone on their stupid epic game about an angel slaughtering pole dancer, then the opening of Bayonetta 2 is the best way to do it. I've mentioned it before, but it bears repeating that this opening is just perfection. Starting off by fighting off angel centaurs on speeding jets, beating up a big bitch on top of a speeding subway train, then summoning your giant Godzilla demon to eat it and have that same Godzilla demon lose control and try to kill you. Now that's how you summon it properly and quickly, past me. I mean, what do you want me to say here? You're fighting a kaiju-sized dragon on a fucking skyscraper. The atmosphere of this completely contradicts the rest of the opening with its visuals and music. It was all sunshine and rainbows and Frank Sinatra covers, now it's blood red skies and a very sinister orchestra that just screams, "Die, motherfucker, die!" And the fight itself is incredibly simple, but it's still very fun, and is a great way of showing you what you're going to be going up against throughout the game. He's super pissed for reasons that they don't really explain very well, but you retaliate by smacking his fucking face into the building he's standing on. This first fight is just perfect, in terms of gameplay anyway. Well, I mean, there's this transition that seems incredibly menacing, but you can just put the controller down and he won't touch you. I feel so threatened right now. Also, the story of your summons going berserk and attacking you ended up being a wasted opportunity, because this is the only time this specific thing happens. I guess he was specifically super pissed about Baldur snapping his neck like a chump in the first game, and to address another 10-year-old elephant in the room, I complained that this boss fight was too short back on my old video, but nowadays, I don't find it as much of an issue. I mean, it could have been slightly longer, but I'd much rather have a boss fight be a little shorter than I like than to have a boss fight drag on for what feels just shy of an eternity. But I guess wanting more of this is just a testament to how good a boss is if I wanted more of it. Seriously, this opening level and boss are just pure excellence and should have gotten a much higher spot on my old video. Though with that said, this boss fight still holds up as one of my favorites from the first game and still deserves its original spot. The first Cardinal Virtue boss set a precedent with his satisfaction, Temperantia had great atmosphere and great music, Babyface Meatball had a great climax, but the fourth and final one has all four of these qualities, on top of having the best design. Though I have to question how he can even eat with that upside down mouth of his. I thought eating upside down was considered a choking hazard. Now if you thought fighting Temperantia in a hurricane was awesome, how about a storming ocean while using a steel plate from an airplane as a surfboard? Or if that isn't enough, then how about summoning a spider to bite his face right off, but you actively participate in his own execution by making him swim over to his new creepy crawly BFF by force, twice. And if that wasn't enough, you finish the fight by fighting him inside the eye of a raging whirlpool. And then top that off, he gets destroyed by living every arachnophobic's worst nightmare. Seriously, this fight has it all and then some. It's epic, it's fun, flashy, atmospheric, and gives you the best sense of freedom in the actual battle with the open-ended arena. Though, I guess if you pointed a gun to my head and forced me to nitpick, then I'd have to say there's a lot of dead space going around where he just dives into the sea, since his attacks are super easy to avoid by going in one direction. And man, I thought these water graphics looked great back in the day, but now, holy shit. Like I said though, nitpicks. This fight was my favorite by such a large margin that I managed to get the pure platinum trophy on this guy, on an old save file on my 360 version, that I don't have anymore, which that's a testament to how fun this boss fight is. And yet it missed out on the top 5 by just a smidge because of... So, in continuing down the list of the bosses that suffer from chronic blue balls disease, we had the rematch against Baldur in his younger days. Now, before you guys call me out on breaking my own rules on the rival battles, I will just say that I am not breaking the rival battles rule here. Since yes, this is the true identity of the Masked Luminous Sage. Oh, spoilers by the way if you didn't know that, which why are you even watching this if you don't already know that? But the thing is that I find this fight against Baldur to be very different from the Masked Luminous Sage fights in terms of gameplay and mechanics that I rank the arguable third fight as its own beast entirely. He has the same projectiles as before, but he's got quite the range and attack patterns with a wide range of mix-ups. Basically, fighting this bitch is like fighting a pro Tekken player because hot damn, I forgot about how hard this fight is. I wouldn't be surprised if I got a lot of get good comments because of this footage. I won't lie, I ate complete shit during this playthrough. It's that fucking ground sword attack that got me the most. I don't think I dodged it a single time this go around. But man, I can't be that mad because this fight is the pure definition of the word epic. The atmosphere and background visuals are just so intense, the music is excellent, yet another one that got cucked out of being in Smash Bros. Though, I don't know, is it because it's called You May Call Me Father? The gameplay is exhilarating, and it's all a fair, if difficult, challenge. This is literally everything the Acer battle should have been. Are you taking notes there, you little bitch? Or at least a great final boss for any other game. And I feel like this was the last boss that truly had that final boss feel throughout this entire game. But what's this, you say? Both Boulder battles back to back? Yeah, this was by far the hardest placement out of the top 5 since the competition was truly stiff by this point. Since he's the most interchangeable out of all of them, take this one with a bit of a grain of salt. I first had him below the Boulder fight from 2, then I had him at number 4, then at 5, and then I ultimately decided to throw him here at number 4 in the end as my vote for the second best fight in the first game. Instead of in some holy looking arena like you'd expect, the fight takes place on falling debris that is akin to the opening of the game with the Umbral Clock Tower sequence, and the fight itself is just as hectic and challenging, with combos for days, projectiles that can paralyze you, and lava geysers. What? I mean, how the fuck, game? You're on a piece of debris in the shy! Oh my gosh, did I seriously write that? Fuck me. But you may notice that this guy's health bar is surprisingly small in the penultimate boss of the game. So you beat him, summon your demon to snack on him, but then he's just like, lol, no, and snaps your dragon's neck like a Twix bar. So I guess this is the reason Gamora decided to go apeshit in 2. Thanks for that. The second time you beat him, he kills your big ol' centipede boy like it's nothing. I love how this fight manages to display the absolute madman-like power that the Lumen Sages are capable of. I mean, if the Umbra Witches can do some flippy power scale level bullshit, why can't this guy? Like, he could just yeet buildings at you like a hacky sack, and I love how he uses a space satellite to fire lasers at you, but then he just gets annoyed in the final phase and tries crashing it into you, only for you to throw the thing back and forth like the world's weirdest game of tennis. I love this series, I love this fight, and not to mention, the finisher's one of the best of the series with Bayonetta delivering one of the rawest lines in gaming history.
Don't fuck with a witch.
What an icon. So, I said that my placing of the Jean fights was the weirdest placement of the list. Well, I lied because this one might actually be the weird one of the list. Because yeah, Singularity was the first Platinum Games final boss in close to a decade to be somewhat decent, but let me ask you, viewer, out of all the games that came between Bayonetta 2 to today, why was Bayonetta Origins of all games the one to cook with its final boss? Let me repeat, the third best boss in Bayonetta history, in my opinion anyway, came from Origins. So I honestly thought that Lucan was going to be the final boss of the game during that boss fight, but then the game had you go through this auto-run sequence that plays a remix of the song Friend that played during the climax of the first game. It's simple, but it's just to get you familiar with it for later on. Then Morgana reveals her true intentions for you in a plot twist I called Minute 1 of the game. She's actually Lucan's mom who was using you as a means of getting his curse reversed after Puka screwed her husband over by killing him. It's pretty obvious that they just don't care about making intriguing plots in this series anymore. As for the gameplay, I'm not fucked in the head for this, am I? The fight itself is actually amazing. It starts off with another running segment, but this time it's much more chaotic and the atmosphere is way more intense. While with the constant spider-like she summons, it's surprisingly difficult to dodge them all given how many she summons at once. The actual fight starts when she becomes gigantic. Now the game already did a solid job with the respect for the series Origins, with hints of nostalgia throughout the game, like with the Angel Goons in the first Puka battle. So with that said, the fight had the Bayonetta 1 soundtrack earlier on, but now this game gives you access to Witch Time. Dude, I had the dumbest fucking grin on my face when she activated this for the first time in the battle, and it fits so well within the narrative of the moment. Then, after the cutscene, the fight turns into those giant Bowser battles from Mario Galaxy 2, but actually good. You basically fight against her spider demon with Morgana occasionally chiming in to attack you. Then you use one of her spider's severed legs as a spear to chuck it back at her. That's metal as shit for a rated T game. Also, I forgot to mention, but the entire fight is played out as Unbound Cheshire, so it's only one character you have to worry about. So this is already pretty good, right? But then the final boss is where this fight truly won me over. For Morgana fuses with her spider demon, so it's because of this I can thank for that Bayonetta 3 thing, and holy shit, they copy from Ronaldo's arena from Elden Ring? I mean no hyperbole when I say that this is the best boss arena in the whole series. It's so beautiful. And the fight itself is just, holy shit. She's insanely fast with such a wide pool of attacks that, no joke, I got close to dying a couple times during this fight. I gotta say that I'm just flabbergasted. This fight is literally everything I wanted in a good Platinum Games final boss for close to a decade. It's epic, it's flashy, its atmosphere is excellent, it's got style, and most importantly, it's fun as hell. And to remind you, the last great final boss from Platinum Games was Dragenga from the wonderful 101, and that game came out 12 years ago. This fight truly is one of Platinum Games' best bosses of all time, and again, this fight came from motherfucking Bayonetta Origins, a game that wasn't supposed to cook this hard. But alas, two bosses in the series cooked just a little harder and way earlier. So, ever since I made my worst Platinum Games bosses video back in 2021, I've been hearing from a lot of fans of recent memory, as well as a couple of comments on my other videos, that Jubileus from the first game was actually a bad boss fight. I've even heard some people claim that she's the worst fight in the franchise now that the Democracy made his video. And if you're someone with this opinion now that a popular YouTuber said it, let me just say now with as much respect as appropriately possible. You people are unavoidably fucking stupid! In no fucking universe is this boss fight even in the same ballpark as that dumpster fire of a boss, Aesir. For people saying that she's a bad boss fight out of nowhere, first of all, no, she's not. Second of all, this opinion wasn't even uttered until the Democracy uploaded his boss ranking of the first Bayonetta, a video that has miraculously vanished from the face of YouTube as I was in the middle of script writing, by the way. Now, don't take this as me slamming the Democracy or throwing shade at him for his opinions. He's free to have his opinions, but I watched his explanation of the Jubileus fight being the worst fight in the game, and I cannot say that I disagree with any man's opinions on anything video game related harder than this one. Well, besides some people claiming that Breath of the Wild is the best 3D Zelda game, but
Oh, but the ice phase is complete bullshit because you can get stun locked if you fall into the ice.
okay, that's fair, the stun locking is really stupid, but you just counted yourself by saying if you fall in. If you fall in there, then it is pretty much your fault, Poindexter.
Oh, but the black hole is an instant kill and it's impossible to avoid, so it's bullshit.
Hey, you remember that Panther Within exists, right? That thing you use to move around the world faster? It lets you outrun the gravitational pull, so, you just use that.
Oh, but wait, the black hole attacks, it turns you into a little razor for a free hit because it's impossible to avoid.
Just use Crow Within to avoid it. You're at the end game, you should have it by now.
Oh, but wait, people say that if you like this boss fight, that means you have a small dick or something.
Yeah, alright.
And mine's the size of a kaiju.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna pretend I understand people on the internet. My point is that if you're gonna dislike a boss or have a conflicting opinion on something, then please don't steal it from a popular YouTuber and regurgitate it like it's gospel. That goes doubly for you, DK64 haters. Especially if it's from a YouTuber who has said that you can't upgrade your weapons in Metal Gear Rising when the game clearly asks you if you want to upgrade your weapons after each chapter. I guess the Democracy just blinks for 5 minutes straight? Again, not attacking the Democracy, just needed to point out some takes. Because honestly, this fight is still a masterpiece with few, if any, flaws. It's still got the insane flashy spectacle that the game is built up to, the opening alone is going up a space rocket on a motorcycle, which is always epic. The combat is still incredibly fun with you hopping around like a grasshopper on coke, and this might just have the single best battle theme in the entire Platinum Games catalog. Hey, no, you go over there, this video isn't about you. And the finisher is just the most insane bullshit ever. You Falcon Punch God in the fucking face across the solar system with completely accurate colors on the planets, by the way, and send her soul into the sun. This finisher was so nice that they used it twice, and they made it so much lamer in the second game. But yeah, this is still one of the best final bosses in all of gaming. Haters! It's got the flashy over-the-top bullshit that put Platinum on the map, the great gameplay, the epic as fuck soundtrack, the climactic feeling a final boss is supposed to provide. It has it all. I think this is the closest Platinum has to a perfect final boss in Platinum Games. But there stands one more boss that manages to top even this one. So this list was rather difficult to organize since there were so many freaking bosses in this series. Some were good, one was Aesir, and they all had a lot of stuff to talk about. But the hardest part writing this script was just pretending like the number one boss had any competition whatsoever. If you've seen my old list, then you already know that number one was going to be the Mass Lumen Sage. I've already explained it years ago, so just go watch that video if you want to know why. Thanks for watching, bye! Nah, I'm kidding. If you know me, then you already know that I adore this boss fight. If you played the game, then you already know why this fight is so damn good. Is there anyone out there who genuinely hates this boss fight? If so, then first of all, who hurt you? And secondly, if you actually hate this boss fight, then please keep your opinions to yourself. I mean, you're still cool, probably. But I've rambled enough. Let's talk about the boss fight. The Masked Lumen Sage, who shall remain nameless for those that fell asleep 4 spots ago, is basically a Sage clone of yourself. He's fast with quick combos, has a wolf transformation to close distances, and even has his version of Wicked Weaves with the cardinal virtues. And throughout this game, you have to fight him twice. The first fight takes place in Chapter 4, remember this for later kids, and the second in Chapter 7 after getting swallowed by an insidious manta ray that somehow managed to sneak up on you. Womp womp. It's intense and he'll kick your ass something fierce if you're not careful. But give it some time and you both summon your big boss monsters to start off a kaiju fight in the background. And occasionally your demon cat or snake thing gets knocked out and you have to attack the sage to get your demon to stop his angel from hitting you with a screen nuke. The first fight has you take it to the skies and then you fight in a flying battle. Seriously, how can you look at this shit right here and tell me that this isn't awesome? And major compliments to the background visuals. Blood red skies on the right, holy looking sunlight on the left with Fimbulventer stuck in the middle. And the music is just sublime. Again, these songs should have been in Smash. Sakurai, we all know Smash 6 is gonna happen. I'll sacrifice one character to get more Bayonetta boss themes in the next game if you could just make it happen, please. And then you end the fight with this epic punch-out style brawl and an earth-shattering explosion that ends the first fight. The second fight doesn't have the same visual flair since it's just a lot of pink and red, but the Hydra and Sapien ship boss fight in the background adds to the epic flair, and it's just funny that your brawl is giving the Manta Ray gastrointestinal issues, which unfortunately means that if you force me to pick which of these fights I prefer, then the first one wins by a landslide. It's got the presentation, the gameplay, the spectacle, and the insane bullshit that Platinum is best known for, just like Jubileus. But the thing is, Jubileus was the final boss, and a great one at that. But this one is only the 3rd and 6th boss of the game. You fight him the first time in Chapter 4 out of 16. This really fit the bill of giving the game a constant climactic feeling, and they nailed it flawlessly. There's a reason why they used it in the marketing so much. But really, I've spent an ungodly amount of time during the writing process trying to fully explain why this boss is as good as it is. And I don't know if I can with the short amount of time I've given myself for this segment. The simple answer is that it's the craziest flashy bullshit for my dopamine-obsessed brain to slurp up like a code slushie. But on top of everything, the combat, visuals, presentation, this is definitive proof of just how a man like Hideki Kamiya could cook up something this creative and insane with enough passion and imagination. There are other bosses from other Platinum Games titles and other games I love that I feel can barely hold a candle to him, but in terms of fights and Bayonetta alone, the Masked Lumen Sage ran away with the #1 spot. And given what's been going on with Platinum, what with Kamiya leaving the company and the layoffs, the future for Platinum looks a little bleak. And if I'm right about that, then I can at least appreciate them for this masterpiece of a boss battle. Or boss battles. It's not just my pick for the definitive best boss in Bayonetta history, but the Masked Lumen Sage, after all these years, is still the best Platinum Games boss and one of my favorite bosses of all time. I'm the Awesome Jimbo, happy 10 years to the channel, and here's to a hopefully bright future for Platinum, and here's also hoping that Okami 2 is just as good as I hope it'll be. Though, whether you love him or hate him, Kamiya will make that dream a reality. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.